Hi, Michael. Welcome. And thank you for accepting my invitation to have this chat, this interview.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for thinking of me and including me in this.
Sure. Before we start, we jump to the questions. Can you tell us a few words about yourself in regards to your experience in engineering?
Absolutely. Yeah. I spent 7 years as an engineer. I was working at different companies. First, I started off actually working in Windows software. It was this multi-server stuff. This is before the cloud was a thing. We didn't know what the cloud was. It was just the stuff you saw up high in the sky. And I spent 5 years actually at that first role and learned a lot. We were working remotely a little bit even because I was working with people in Russia. And this is when we were like using Yahoo Instant Messenger. There was no
Uh-huh.
fancy things like this, like Zoom. So I learned a lot about working remotely with teams, at least working in co-located teams, really cool. After that, I made the jump into web technology. It started becoming popular. I wanted to know what JSON was. I kept hearing that in blog
Mhm.
posts. And then this new job, they're like, we're working on JSON and an API. I'm like, this is awesome. I don't know what any of that is. I jumped in and I was a senior engineer there for 2 years. And then that's when I transitioned into management. My manager left and they were replaced by someone internal who, after a month, left as well because they were already like in job offering stages with a different company at that whole time. So I decided, I'm going to step up. I've been here for a few years. I seem to have a knack for helping out co-ops and I'm a go-to person for a lot of technical things. So I jumped in and I spent 2 years there as a manager, which was traumatizing. No, it was awesome. It was it was a huge change, as we'll get into a little bit. But after 2 years there, I started working at that was the whole. Oh no, I jumped into a smaller startup as a director of technology. Super inflated title, but amazing amounts of new hats I had to wear,
Mhm.
and a whole new stack, which maybe we'll get into as well. And after that, I spent the next few years over, like after COVID, working remotely for scale ups, let's call them, companies from 50 to 100 people. And the pattern was they would get acquired by private equity, things would change, and then I would go to the next company because the culture just wasn't the culture I signed up for.
Mhm.
And so 9 years of management total. And last year, at the end of the year, I decided to actually follow a dream of mine and a passion of mine and
Mhm.
go full time into coding, leveraging my 16 years or so of experience to helping engineers find clarity and get unstuck and find meaning in their work. And it's been quite the adventure, whole new skill set as well, just the whole business side. And the coaching is awesome. And that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. I see there were around 16 years in software
Yeah.
development. Yeah, around
Yes.
kind of, I had the same. So seven coding and then as a manager. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you for all your experience. I got that. Okay, let's jump to the questions. I see that you were a software engineer and then you jumped to being an engineering manager. You weren't exactly a tech lead. It depends on the companies. Yeah, you might jump directly to engineering manager, you might be a tech lead, depends on the size. The question is, what do you wish you have known before becoming an engineering manager?
Yeah. There are roughly three things that come to mind. The first is that if you want to advance, you want more responsibility, you want to make more money, you want to get open up more opportunities on the market, you don't have to become a tech lead or a manager. That's something I actually didn't realize. It was before we had all these amazing online communities and people were sharing notes, so to speak, about their experiences, like you can see on LinkedIn. And it was a very black box, the market. You had to actually go places to get job interviews. You remember those days? You'd actually have to
Mhm.
spend like a whole day figure out how to tell your boss, yeah, I'm not coming today, and use like a PTO. And that's how you learned about the market, was like actual phone calls with people actually visiting offices. It was very hard to know what other companies were doing. And so in my company, there was no technical path really. There was no such thing as a staff engineer. There was like, you're a senior developer and then what? You're a manager. Or you're an architect, which is a huge jump, which is
Mhm.
like now you're looking at the whole organization. And so I'm not regretting it because I think that management was right for me in retrospect, and I've loved it. But I would also say that, I didn't really think of any other options. It was the only option I had, was become a manager. And I didn't really realize how different the job was. I just thought, okay, I'm going to be doing some of the same stuff and I can like organize a team a little bit. So my first piece of advice is make sure you know what you're getting into and do it deliberately so that you're setting yourself up for a career move that you want and that's best for you. And it's okay if you don't want to go that path. There are technical paths that have evolved since I made the jump that are very much uh, they give a lot of opportunity for advancement and very much respected, and salaries are similar. So yeah, that's the
Mhm.
first piece of advice. The
Okay.
second piece,
It's
yeah, if you have
uh,
questions,
yeah, I'm going to interrupt you, but just want to make sure
please.
it's so you recommend the advice is that you go and you have a conversation with somebody or the current engineering manager or somebody else who can tell you what are actually your responsibilities in the role. Like not just to assume. Don't assume that you're just managing a bit the team. Make sure that you are clear on what's expected of you in that role before you jump into it. That's what you
Yeah,
yeah?
understand what a tech lead or an engineering manager is, and
Mm-hmm.
understand what other potential paths
Pathways.
exist either at your company or in the market, and don't just do it because you think you're supposed to do it or because your company is kind of just shoehorning you into that path. uh,
Yeah.
it's a big change, a big transition, and there are potentially other paths of advancements that might lean better into your strengths.
Yeah. If I look also at my experience, it's, oh, as you said, either you become a architect, either you become a manager. That was in. Actually, I'm not that aware now what are the other path possibilities, but as you said, yeah, you can check it out and to see if that is not the direction that you want. Yeah. Okay, got it. Good. Thank you. What's another advice?
Yes, the second piece of advice is that in order to gain influence, communication and relationships are key. It's not about your technical acumen. I It took me a while to really realize that. Now that's a classic advice, and I'm going to repeat it because it bears repeating. That just it's not about how good you are in the IDE or in the editor or on Git. It's about how much you're making the team feel good and how much credibility you gain with them by building relationships with them. And the relationships are going to be the currency of your influence. That the stronger your relationship, the more you're going to be able to help them grow, and the more you're going to be able to help them uh, impact the business and
Perform. Mhm.
perform according to what's actually needed. So don't
Yeah.
underestimate that. It's
Yeah.
extremely
Communication and
important.
relationships. And that might be going from a software engineer to a manager is something that you might need to work on, right? It's communication skills that you might not have needed before, right? So it's really important to focus on that. Maybe you can do a training or things like that, but it's what I get from what you are saying is to focus on relationships and building trust with those people. It's not only the project that needs to perform and you need to deliver, it's also people. Keep them happy and they will perform.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Right.
like when I was in my that first management job, we were actually working in a Toronto office, and our main headquarters was in Cleveland in the United States. And I remember my product manager, who was kind of my mentor, he's the one who gave me the promotion, who made it happen.
Mhm.
We would drive there. We probably drove there like 10 times over like a year. And that's when I learned, hey, like we're going here. Why? Well, we're not actually doing any work, but we're spending 3 days and we're going bowling. We're going out for dinner. We're just walking around the office and schmoozing with people. Like we needed to get stuff done with the release engineering team that was now in charge of deploying our product that was having tension. There was a lot of tension because we used to just be quick and nimble. Then we got acquired by this company. Like, oh no, everything has to go through these gatekeepers now. And I'm like, well, I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense. Why don't they just do it? Like they're destroying the product. But they had their own mandate. And the lesson that I learned throughout that time, one of the many lessons was relationships. And that was just one example of that. Like we would go there, and then while we're playing bowling, and I'm getting decimated because I'm not good at bowling. And that's when you discover the people who all of a sudden have like bowling shoes. You're like, wait, you actually like bowling? That's so interesting. There's always that person who shows up with like their own ball. Yeah, I was bowling for 10 years, but that's a side play, right? It's on the bowling alley that we were like able to get things done. It wasn't on
Yeah,
Skype or Teams or whatever we were using at the time, and it wasn't Logic either. It wasn't like
I think it
they could agree
applies
with you
today
totally, and
also.
yeah, no,
It
for
applies
sure.
today is you connect in person and then you can pick up the phone and just call that person, then they know who you are. Hmm.
Yes, and then the third lesson that I would
Yeah.
say that I wish I'd known was that authority doesn't come from someone's position. And it ties into what I was saying about relationships, but it was an eye opener about how other people's authority also doesn't come from positions. You might look at the CEO or the CTO as this all powerful position that, they say something, they decree something, and it's like the emperor's decree, and it has to happen. The CEO, when I was working at that company, the same one I was talking about, he said, yeah, your team needs to do exactly what you're saying. You need to have flexibility. You shouldn't have to go through the release engineering gatekeepers, but it didn't matter. We still had to go through all the motions of building the relationships and modifying and tweaking the machine. That don't look at people's positions as authority. There's going to be a little bit of positional authority, but it's going to be social authority that really matters the most. So it's not only about your relationships, it's also understanding that other people's relationships matter as well. And you're going to need to maybe compensate for that, because you're not going to, they might not be working the relationships in your benefit, even if they agree with you.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay. And we kind of combine the two things, like what you wish to have known, and also with the advices that you have for somebody transitioning to that. Do you have any other advice?
Yeah, absolutely. So advice, I would say, don't do it alone. Like, find a mentor, find an ally in the company, find a mentor outside the company. And a mentor doesn't have to be one person, it can be one person per month. Just make sure you're sharing notes with people, so to speak, and you're talking to different people who have been there slightly ahead of you, very much ahead of you, peers. You need all three levels in order to feel, I would say, just stable and like you're growing in the right direction. And these days there's communities you can join, whether it's on LinkedIn, just networking with people. You can find things on people on Reddit. There's so many subreddits. There's Rand's leadership Slack, which I would recommend anyone who's on here to go there. It's a secret weapon. For some reason, some people, like so many people, still don't know about it. And I'm not even going to tell you what it is. Just Google it. Google Rand's leader and join. You will not regret it. That's one thing. So community and mentors, just peers. Don't do it alone. That's number one.
There's also lead dev. Like I recently found
Right.
out of these communities, but they are great. Yeah. I recommend in the program that I do, like join these communities for sure. Great,
Yeah.
great advice. Like get a mentor. There are mentorship programs that are for free. So it's not only about that. Like great advice. Yeah. Find a mentor, find others to speak. Make sure that you know what you're about to do. Okay, great.
And
Any other
don't
advice?
hesitate to find a coach either. I mean, the coaches aren't for executives only. They're for anyone at any level, and you can get a tremendous amount of value out of finding a coach that is going to help you in your particular position. Another piece of advice I would say, in addition to the mentorship, coaching, don't do it alone, is to treat communication as a new skill, just like you would a new tech framework. Don't look at it as it's like, oh, it's just how I am. I'm just X, Y, and Z, or like, I don't do that. Like, no, it is a skill that you can learn to a large degree. It's not just something you have or don't have, and it's something worth investing in. You weren't born knowing how to code in Java, and you don't have to be born knowing how to talk respectfully, or how to be persuasive, or how to give feedback in a, I guess it's really, really broadly soft skills, right? Treat that as a skill and not just as something that you learn organically.
Yeah, it's exactly. Recently, I wrote a post about that. It's that I was seeing myself as a technical person, and I'm like, I'm not good with the communication. I remember my grades was really low when I needed to think and create something, and I put myself in a box, and I said, oh, I'm good technically, but if you put me to speak or whatever, I cannot. And I realized that it was a blocker for many, many years in my life. I really thought that. And then it's actually, as you said, it's a skill that can be taught, that can be learned. So yeah, it's go and work on it, whatever works. Great advice. Got it. Anything else?
Yeah, one more would be assume positive intent and don't get visibly mad. I'm putting these two together intentionally. So when someone does something that irks you, or that looks like they just made a huge mistake, and you're responsible for this team, let's say, or that code, don't give in to your initial reaction, if you have it, of like just reprimanding this person, or giving them, like, yelling at them. I remember once when I was first starting off managing, there was a person who had repeatedly broke the build. And at some point I went up to him, and after he broke it, like after like a few minutes, and it was in an office, I'm like, you broke the build again. and I could see this person. I like destroyed him. It was horrible. Like he like looked like he was about to cry, and he like pulled me
Yeah.
to the side, and he was like, "You can't talk to me like that." And I it was a harsh lesson for me. But like, did I fix the build by doing that? No. All I did was destroy another human being. And
Yeah.
so that's not necessarily an example of assumed positive intent because with him, there was definitely a room for him to have an improvement. But getting mad at him was not part of the solution. But there are other times when you might think that someone did something terribly wrong, but don't start from that place. Start with curiosity. That's what assume positive intent is about. Ask them questions before you jump to conclusions. And that's also why it's good to not get visibly mad at first, because once you get mad, it's you just look even worse, especially if you were wrong, right?
Mhm.
Before you react to anything, make sure you understand what's going on. And everyone will be better off if you assume positive intent because everyone is trying to do their best job. It might not
Yeah.
be up to your standard, but everyone is showing up to work. At least start with that assumption until proven wrong. They're showing up to work, they're trying to do their best, and usually the mistake they made probably wasn't a mistake at all. It was just a misunderstanding, or it's something that if you want to work on it, you're going to need to leverage your relationship, not your big stick,
Yeah.
your beating stick.
Mm-hmm. Something that I recommend to during the program and the people that I work with is before you have a conversation, until you get yourself into the intention that I want to make it work and I want that person to grow, I'm like, don't have the conversation. Go deal with your emotions. Take a day,
Right.
take 10 days, and then speak about it. But don't like spill out on the other person. Like, deal with your emotions. And if your intention is to go and blame, as your example, don't do it. It doesn't really help. Like, go, as I tell my husband, go in the bedroom and yell there or be upset there. Don't show it in front of the daughter. Yeah. Like deal with your emotions in a way. Yeah. So I would add to that, like deal with your emotions. Don't react in the moment. Take your time that you need and then go with the intention that, okay, let's make this work. It hasn't worked so far. What can we do to make it work in the future? Great. Okay. Good advices. Anything else?
That's
With
good for now. That's plenty
okay.
of stuff for people to contemplate.
Yeah, got it. I do have two more questions. And the next one is, how did you manage to balance hands-on coding with leadership responsibilities?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. In that first management gig, I had been coding on that project for 2 years. I was actually the senior most developer at the time. And so it was somewhat easy. I already knew stuff. I was able to just in between meetings, let's say just crank out refactorings and features, and the team appreciated it. Like I wasn't going over anyone or taking opportunities away from anyone. But it was relatively easy because it was code. I had written most of the code in the application. So there wasn't a lot of upskilling I needed to do. And I that context just made it really easy. Now, after that, I will say I joined the company as the director, and we were building in a stack that I'd never worked in before. And my executive team was very fresh, and there was so much other stuff that I needed to do other than code, and the cost of upskilling was not worth it for me because I made the
Mm-hmm.
calculation that like the best value I can add to the team right now is shielding the team from just all the changing priorities and the chaos. It's helping them build structures so that they could be productive and building out our agile, small a agile process. It was filling in for the lack of product management. It was dealing with hiring. We were fast growing and fast
Mm-hmm.
moving. So I'll be honest, and this isn't going to be everyone's path. I kind of gave up. I
Yeah,
did not balance.
it's
I said, you know what? I'm going to be a pure people manager. That was a deliberate decision I made. Maybe we'll get to eventually in the discussion that it was just upskilling on Sundays was not something I wanted to do or could do. And
mhm.
so I decided to just do what the team needed, and coding was not it.
Yeah, it's it's totally. I see you were coming from what's the value that I can bring. Yeah, and this applies also as a tech lead or as an engineering manager. What's needed right now? What's wanted and needed right now? Is it my value comes from coding or is it coming from other things that I do? It's always that you don't need to balance them. If one project needs more, one needs less, and then you can code. It's really variable. And as you said, it's a choice. Where is my value? My experience was the same as a tech lead. Like I had projects in which I could code like 90%. was going great. I had projects in which I could do like 10% or 0%. I needed to see the client or, yeah, it really, and that's the beauty of the role, yeah, to be flexible. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
The last question is, how did you manage your work-life balance? Yeah, as an engineering manager, as I said, the coding and everything, it's easy to fall to let me work a bit more. How did you manage?
Yes. So the way that I manage it is not by relying on any type of discipline because I'm not so disciplined. I'm not so consistent. The way I manage my personal time and I create barriers and protect it is because I got 5 kids and a wife. I haven't had 5 kids obviously in my entire career, but I've always had a growing family, fast growing. And so when I'm sitting here in the office and 6 o'clock comes and they start clawing at the door and I can hear all the things being thrown downstairs and people beating each other up. I'm just like, all right, I don't care what I'm in the middle of. I'm sorry, I gotta go. I have external accountability just built into my life. They need me in the morning, they need me in the evening. Sometimes they need me during the day. And I've set up my life so that my work supports that. I am in jobs where that flexibility is okay, and I'm not, I don't have to hide it, and that's it. I have my family as an anchor, and I would say, not everyone. I can't suggest everyone have 5 kids, have 2 kids, have 3 kids, have 10 kids. Kids is not the answer. The pattern here is create external accountability for yourself. Don't rely only on your discipline. I would say you can join a class. Let's say if you have a hobby, join a dance class, join a hockey league, join something where people depend on you, and then you're much more likely to turn off the computer at the end of the day than if you just like, well, I have a time block for a half hour to go and I don't know, play guitar. Like for many of us that doesn't work. So that's how I protect my time. That's the first way, is just this external accountability that I have with my family. The next thing is, again, this isn't going to necessarily apply to everyone, but I'm what's called Sabbath observant. So that means from Friday night till Saturday night, every week until I'm not around anymore, like for the rest of my life, I have to turn off the computer. There are certain things that I am obligated to stop doing, and certain obligations that I have about showing up in, let's say, synagogue and family, community type of celebrations, and nothing will ever get in the way of that. That's a sacred time that it doesn't. Again, I have had to set up my life so that I'm not taking advantage of companies, but this is I set up my work around that. My family and my Sabbath, everything else fits in around that. I remember my first full-time job. So the Sabbath type of restrictions also happen sometimes during holidays. And in September, October, depending on the year, there's like a good 3 weeks where there's like 3 or 4 days each week where you're not allowed to work, according to our tradition. So I think I joined like September 5th. I started my first full-time job, and then I had to book off almost 3 weeks of work starting September 15th or something. It's just so, it's awkward. But what I found was, because I was serious about protecting my time, and I had time that I considered sacred, and I'll say small s sacred, it doesn't have to be religious, but when you're serious about protecting your time and people see that, and they see that you don't bend for anything, it's not just about work, it's about anything, that you are consistently protecting your time, then they will typically back off and respect you for it and give you the space you need.
Yeah. What I hear is communication, communicate your needs. Don't to create an expectation in the future. Yeah. Don't create that expectation that you are always going to be available during a weekend or a week. You communicate ahead. That's what I hear. I'm not available in this time. If you email me or something, I will reply on Monday. That's how you create a boundary, as you said, sacred, whatever. It can be anything. I discovered it can be even if I want to read a book, that is valid. I don't need to justify. Before, if I was asked to do some overtime, I needed to have a really good explanation why I can't do it. And actually, I don't. Yeah. If whatever I want to do, it's important for me. I don't need to justify it or explain it. It's just to say it doesn't work for me. Period.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's as you said, it's your responsibility to make it work and to put those limits, barriers, whatever you want to say, boundaries in place, and to communicate them, like not to have expectations that people will, you just don't answer. You can tell them ahead, I'm not available. I won't answer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and be consistent.
They might
Don't be
not like
wishy-washy
it,
about it.
but they don't need to love it. They need to understand it and to be in integrity. Great. Anything else you want to add?
I think that's it.
Yeah, loved it. A lot of insights here. Totally resonated with me. Like I see a lot of pieces that I bring with my clients and my own experience. So thank you for that. And I appreciate you taking the time to be with me and to contribute to others.
Yeah, a pleasure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Okay, bye.